Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Call to the Bullpen. I am one half of your co-host, Jared Silberkleit.
And I am your second half, Austin Keeney.
And we are here back at it 1 week later to talk fallout from the MLB trade deadline. We've also got some news stemming from the NFL's latest Hall of Fame inductions. And that's actually how we're going to kick things off this week. So, of course, the newest members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame include personnel executive Bobby Bethard, as well as Jerry Kramer, Robert Brazil, Brian Dawkins, Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, Brian Urlacher, and the elephant in the room, Terrell Owens. So, T.O., he had his own private Hall of Fame ceremony. He did not attend the main official ceremony, and he has a grudge against sports writers, it seems, mainly because, of course, he was inducted on his third year of eligibility, and his argument is that statistically he's first ballot bar none. Austin, what are your thoughts?
I mean, his numbers are up there. I mean, he's got the second most receiving yards in the history of the NFL as a wide receiver, so I don't see why there would be a reason why he wouldn't make the Hall of Fame. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? Unfortunately, it's not my job to decide. I definitely think he belongs, and everybody has their opinions. I think he belongs as a first ballot Hall of Famer, or I think he thinks he belongs as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, he definitely belongs there. His numbers are up there. He's up there with the best. So,
I mean, for me as a child and an adolescent, I of course grew up thinking T.O. was pretty much public enemy number one. It's no secret that He's been a polarizing figure throughout his career. He's always been a guy that people have said, has attitude issues, been very pompous, arrogant, lets his ego get in the way of his play. He was known for his excessive celebrations, disrespect of fellow players, spitting in D'Angelo Hall's face, the disagreements he got into with Donovan McNabb on the Eagles, being over emotional, like in that Cowboys press conference after they lost the playoff game to the Giants in 2008. So for such a great player, he's almost become just as known for his antics both on and off the field, and it seems that those character issues are what kept him out his first couple of years.
And those character issues could keep, a few other people out. I mean, if Odell Beckham keeps up what he's doing, he might be the best wide receiver in the game or up there with the best wide receivers, but that could keep him out of the Hall of Fame for a while too.
And that's the difficulty, isn't it? I mean, it always seems especially at the wide receiver position, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, it just seems to be the position that attracts the most. I've always wondered why that would be the case, and I think it's because if you look at SportsCenter week in, week out during the NFL season, what are the top 10 plays? What do they mainly consist of? Other than those, incredible kind of random defensive plays that can sometimes really shock you, I think that oftentimes it's the amazing catches in kind of unique, unusual positions. So it seems like those are that's kind of the fame and glory attracting position in the NFL, and I think that that's where the ego kind of is derived from.
I mean, look at the same kind of thing in baseball. I mean, baseball, the fun, 90% of the fun in baseball is off the home run hitters, and that's why there's so many steroids in baseball. Look at the Barry Bonds and the Sammy Sosas, and that whole home run, era and that war of who was the best home run hitter. Everybody has fun watching guys like Judge and Stanton and, even Betts hitting home run after home run. That's where a lot of the highlights come from in these kind of sports. So, I mean, I agree 100%. I think the big spotlight is on the wide receivers. The quarterbacks do their job by throwing the ball downfield, but if the wide receiver doesn't catch the ball, the quarterback can throw the ball 70 yards every single time and put it on the same spot. If there's no receiver there to catch it, then there's no play. So if the wide receivers are making these crazy catches and they're getting a lot of the spotlights, I definitely agree that they're in the spotlight a lot, and they want to show off. So they have these celebrations and on-field and off-field antics because they know people are watching, because they're the big names on the teams.
Especially when you consider that oftentimes these, especially the skinny wide receivers, aren't really counted on for their blocking skills when they're not being figured into a play. And I'm glad that you mentioned quarterbacks having to manage the game, because I think that that's one of the reasons you often don't see the ego running wild at the quarterback position, because I think it's a position that requires a lot of maturity. It requires adult decision-making skills, and people that don't have that superior intelligence, that don't have the temperament, often don't seem to really last in the NFL. If you listen to a quarterback interview versus a wide receiver interview during the season, I think it's a totally different vibe that you get. It's always those guys that are very, reserved and comfortably confident in, if that makes sense, that seem to be the ones who really have the long-lasting careers. I think that if you look at a guy like Tom Brady is obviously a very fiery, emotional guy, but it seems like he always channels his aggression in the right way. A guy like Peyton Manning was always heralded for how he carried himself.
Yeah, I mean, even Drew Brees. I mean, look at even the things he does on and off the field. I mean, with I think he won the Man of the Year award or whatever that award's called 3 or 4 years now. I mean, he's a big name in a big spotlight in the NFL. So I definitely agree 100%. I mean, the quarterback position is the managerial position on the field. Obviously, off the field is the coach, but the coach talks to the quarterback 98% of the time, and the quarterback runs the offense.
Of course, yes. You hear it all the time that you talk about coach. There's a reason you hear so much about coach-quarterback combos, because the quarterback is that on-field leader, and the coach is going to rely on his QB's input, and they expect him to make those contributions, not just to perform, but to really, wrangle the guys and take, just take the horns and grab that leadership.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, you also have to look at the fact that there's 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field, and it's 4 times the amount of quarterbacks on the field. So there's definitely, a lot more percentage of antics that can happen, or a higher percentage of antics that can happen because of the amount of wide receivers there are, especially on a good team. You get 3 or 4 guys that are some of the top wide receivers. They're making a lot of great plays, and they do some silly things. But even if you look at the quarterbacks that do stuff like that, I mean, look at Johnny Manziel. I mean, Johnny Manziel acted like a clown most of his college career, his short NFL career, and now he's doing it in the CFL with 4 interceptions in his first game. I don't know if you saw that, but
exactly.
I guess he hasn't left Cleveland, so we'll see how that goes.
Right, and guys like him, guys like Ryan Leaf, we can pick apart their skills till the cows come home. However, I think that a common trait you see in, again, guys like that is the temperament, the lack of maturity, the lack of the leadership ability. I think that's just as big a reason for their failure in the NFL as their technical objective play would be as well. But bring it back to T.O. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer in your opinion?
Statistically, I don't see why not. You look if you are voting on the Hall of Fame based off of numbers on paper and nothing else, right, there's no reason he shouldn't be. I mean, he's ahead of everybody other than Jerry Rice in receiving yards, and if that's what wide receivers are, if that's the stat that they're gauged on other than touchdowns, if he's top 2 out of however many wide receivers have ever played the game of football, there's no reason that he shouldn't be.
Right, and I would tend to agree with that as well, and I think character-wise we can, again, look at him and say that he had a lot of growing up to do, and I would say if you listen to his interviews nowadays, it sounds like he's still got a lot of that same ego that we saw on the field, and there were a lot of on-field acts that he did that would certainly have bothered me if I was a player on the opposing team.
Yeah, spiking the ball in the middle of the Cowboy star.
Yeah, of course. And then he gets creamed right afterward. He gets what he deserves. And spitting in D'Angelo Hall's face.
Speaking of D'Angelo Hall, did you see what he said about Jay Cutler?
What did he say? At
his retirement ceremony, he said he'd be in the Hall of Fame if he played against Jay Cutler more often.
Wouldn't they all, right? That's great. That's interesting that he came up in the news right around that time too. But poor Jay Cutler. Poor Jay Cutler.
Yeah, that's not the best quarterback on the planet.
No. But yeah, you got some great names in here as well. I mean, I think especially T.O. going in the same time as Moss. You've got like 2 of the top wide receivers of all time there, and Ray Lewis, the original Raven. it's really, for me, it's a lot of reflecting, looking at some of these names, because I mean that's what happens. Guys that you used to watch dominate about 10 years ago, when it gets to be about that time, they're going in the Hall of Fame. I think for us, being at this age, in our mid-20s right now, these are guys that we kind of grew up with throughout.
These were the staple of football. I mean, you played Madden. Who'd you want to play as? You wanted Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher, and in your midfield on defense, and you wanted Randy Moss on as a wideout. I mean, those guys are even Brian Dawkins. Brian Dawkins in the secondary. I mean, how you put this team on a field, and I mean, any fantasy owner wants these 5 guys on their team. I mean, imagine your fantasy lineup: Brian Dawkins, Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Brian Urlacher. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
it's the core of football.
Exactly, and it triggers for me just those really strong emotions. Just watching these guys as a child going into my teenage years, before the analytical side of the game sits in as you get older and interpret things in a different way. I mean, I just remember growing up hating Brian Dawkins' guts. He wasn't just the Eagle, he was the dirty Eagle, the one that was always laying in those really vicious hits on the Giants. Or one of my best friends is a diehard Ravens fan, and Ray Lewis was the staple of the franchise from the moment that it started. So it's and then you look at baseball too, guys like Vlad Guerrero, who didn't have MVP baseball 2005 and wanted to be Vlad or something like that,
or any baseball game wanted to be Vlad.
Exactly. So it's just it makes you kind of get a little bit sentimental if you're around our age group, just knowing that these are the guys when you were 13 years old kind of looked up to.
Yeah, I agree, and we're going to see that soon. I'm sure Derek Jeter will be the first ballot Hall of Famer. We'll be saying the same thing as diehard Yankee fans. I mean, it's going to be a sentimental time, and it is like I said, with the core of football going into the Hall of Fame is a big moment in history.
Well, Derek Jeter, I mean, he's swimming in piles of cash in Miami, but I'm sure he wouldn't have liked what he saw on TV if he was watching the Yankees-Red Sox series this past weekend, because oh my goodness, this was the low point of the season.
Lowest of the lowest. I mean, we went into Boston expecting and hoping and praying to at least take a couple games. I mean, even if we had pushed and won 2 and lost 2, but didn't change the standings at all, we still had a decent shot.
It would have been considered a missed opportunity, though.
Oh, a missed opportunity, 100%. Yeah. But 2 out of 4 is better than 0 out of 4.
Of course, yeah. I mean, they've practically eliminated themselves from the divisional race, is what they've done this weekend. And not only that, but just to pretty much not show up with the bats from midway through from just about the 3rd or 4th inning on of the first game, and all the way through pretty much the rest of the series, save for that 8th inning on last night, Sunday.
Yeah,
the bats went cold.
Even the 9th inning on the 3rd game there. I mean, they put up a little bit of a fight in the bottom.
The game
of the
was over at that point.
Obviously, the game was over, but it was nice to see a little bit of a fight. And I kind of had a little bit of faith going into yesterday. And watching the game, I mean, 4-1, 5th, 6th, 7th inning. I was ready to go to bed, call it a night, wake up, and have a win. I stayed up. I don't know why. I'm mad that I did. I barely slept. I mean, it was miserable to stay up to 1 o'clock in the morning and watch the Yankees blow that game. I mean, Chapman was atrocious.
And sometimes you just don't have it. That's what happened there. I think
he's a human being.
Yeah, he didn't have it that night. And Boone had already. I mean, he set the table perfectly. He burns through Robertson, Britton, Betances. He thinks he's got that bridge, and he's just thinking, I got a 3-run lead. I'm going to stick with this guy, and no matter how bad the situation looks, we're still 1 out away. So he's just he's leaving him out to die out there. And
they brought the horse behind the barn.
Yeah, exactly. And then to lose it essentially on that fielding error from Andujar, this is a really kind of perplexing play to me, because you've got the guy fielding this hopper and just throwing with planted feet, not moving an inch, and
not moving an inch. He stepped back a second time. It wasn't even. I mean, it was planted feet, but I mean, he didn't step into that throw in any way, shape, or form. He stepped back to catch the ball and took another half step back as he threw it. I mean, that's atrocious.
And I think Bird's been catching a lot of unnecessary heat over that, just because I think that when people look at it in a vacuum and they see the ball bounce from his glove, they think, oh, he should have caught it. But he said it's such an awkward angle there.
No, absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form is that Bird's fault, and that's why it was an error on Andujar. I mean, the official scorer scored it that way, and you can't blame Bird for that. I mean, he's the first baseman. Should he catch the ball? Maybe. I mean, yeah, that's his job to catch the ball, but it's also the fielder's job to make it a catchable throw.
Right. But, you can hold Andujar's feet to the fire on that play, but I would also argue it shouldn't have even come down to that, because with Chapman, you're looking at a guy who had a negative ball-strike ratio the entire inning.
Oh, the entire
This
time.
guy threw 40 pitches, and most of them were out of the strike zone.
And he's not a long reliever. I mean, he's a 3 or 4 pitch per guy pitcher to get 3 outs and call it a day, maybe 4 outs. I mean, he doesn't throw 10 pitches per guy, and that's it.
We have seen with Chapman and Betances as well that these are two guys that throw extremely hard, and when they're on, they're going to blow people away. When they're not on, they could be extremely erratic, and this was the first really full-scale meltdown we've seen from Chapman. It was his first blown save in forever, in months.
Yeah, I can't even remember the last one.
But I mean, walking 3 batters in 1 inning, the writing was on the wall there, and no matter how, it's in that situation, no matter how Boone feels, how much confidence he has, you can see that this guy is laboring out there, and although you might have burned through some of your better setup guys, even if it means bringing in Holder, who completely lost your confidence several nights ago.
They had Sonny Gray warming up in the bullpen, so hell, I would have taken anybody other than that.
You've got to get somebody else out there, because this is not the Chapman that you've come to expect on this night. He did not have it.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, he's a human being. He's not a robot.
No.
He's not Wild Thing. I mean, some people just don't have it. I mean, he's a human being. He's allowed to be a human being. That's why there's a category for blown saves and losses. If he wasn't a human being, there would be no baseball. So I don't. Do we go all the way back and blame Boone for not pulling him? Do we blame Chapman for not being a great pitcher in that inning? Do we blame Andujar for that error, or not scoring enough runs to even support it in the first place? I mean, you can have the argument all day long. I don't think it's one person's fault. I mean, yeah, I would blame Boone a little bit more than anybody for not having the whereabouts or the stones to get out there and take him out.
But I think it's more than looking at that inning. There's a million things you could pick apart about Chapman's performance, but it hurts even worse when it's just the culmination of an ugly series, and I think you need to go back and evaluate the lineup's performance throughout this series was just not good. And I don't want to take anything away from what Rick Porcello, Nate Eovaldi, and David Price did. Although with Price, I think that the Yankees were at least a little bit more effective in staying patient with at-bats and driving up his pitch down to get him out, after 6+ innings. That's,
Porcello threw 89 pitches. 89 pitches.
You cannot allow a guy to...
A complete game. Rick Porcello.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't Chris Sale. This isn't, the Justin Verlander of last year. This isn't Randy Johnson. This is Rick Porcello. He's not a Cy Young Award winner.
Well, he did actually win a Cy Young 2 years ago.
This year. This year. He's not a Cy Young caliber pitcher. He's a good pitcher. I'm not taking anything away from him, and he's on, the Red Sox, who win 70% of the time. So, I mean, he's not a bad pitcher, but the Yankees cannot ever allow a pitcher to throw an 89-pitch complete game. I mean, that is absolutely atrocious. Yankee pitchers are throwing 20 pitches an inning. You do the math. They're out by the 4th.
Exactly. We were just
not the 9th.
The 4th or 5th. Yeah, exactly. And with Porcello, Eovaldi really shocked me even more, because Porcello, he has won quite a lot of games for the Red Sox over the last 3 years. So, I'll give him credit there. I don't see him as a shutdown pitcher. He's a guy who typically doesn't have a very, very high strikeout rate. He's somebody who, again, the Yankees have shown that they can be in there against very, very talented pitchers, like your Dallas Keuchels, and
even David Price. They've had David Price's number all year, and any other team, David Price is a phenomenal pitcher. I mean, regardless, he's a great pitcher, and the Yankees can hold their own against good pitching.
They have shown that ability. It's really, I think earlier in the season they were saying that you can throw your best pitcher at the Yankees, but the hitters would just grind out at bats. A guy like Gardner, who is so good, I think, at staying patient and just, making the pitchers waste pitches by fouling it off until he gets his sweet one to hit, and guys like Stanton have shown patience. Hicks at times has been pretty patient at the plate, but you're giving up outs at that point when you're averaging 2-3 pitches in at bat. You've got to make these pitchers work and get them out of the game, and to have it happen on back-to-back nights, essentially. I think the first game just was an awful feeling when they allowed 8 runs in that inning, and you just felt completely hopeless. But I will give plenty of credit to Boston for what they were able to accomplish this weekend, because they've got the best top half lineup in baseball, bar none, both power-wise, average-wise. It's all there. They get guys on base. They create havoc on the base paths. J.D. Martinez is absolutely the best hitter in baseball right now.
100%, no doubt about it.
And Mookie Betts is having a terrific season. And there's a reason that they are where they are. But we mentioned their lack of pen depth, and their starters were able to shrink the game for the pen, and by going that deep. Porcello pitched the entire game by himself, and it just really feels like such a lost opportunity for the Yankees, just because they've shown that they've been able to beat Boston. They're kind of eating a lot of crow right now, because Cashman talked about how it seems like the Red Sox don't really lose to anybody else, but we've been able to get to them. And then to have this kind of performance, it looks bad for the whole organization.
No, it looks awful.
Well, that being said, what's next? What's next for them? Because now you've got question marks stemming from Aaron Judge being out of the lineup. Now you're seeing all the stats starting to come up, stats with Aaron Judge in the lineup and without Judge in the lineup, because the fact of the matter is, since he's gotten hurt, the team has gone 3-6.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the Yankees need Aaron Judge. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's Aaron Judge for a reason. I mean, he's one of the biggest names in baseball. I mean, just looking at some of the stats, I mean, their record without Aaron Judge since 2017 even will go back, 8-16 without Judge. With Aaron Judge, 151-97. I mean, clearly they're a winning team with him in the lineup and a losing team without him in the lineup. Is he the reason they're losing? I don't think 100%, but it's definitely a contributor.
Obviously, Aaron Judge is not a guy that you want to lose in your lineup. But, that being said, I think that there are a lot of teams that would love to have the current Yankees lineup as is right now. You're telling me that you wouldn't want a lineup that has Brett Gardner, Aaron Hicks, Giancarlo Stanton, Didi Gregorius, Gleyber Torres, Miguel Andujar, Greg Bird. You can absolutely not only win games, you should be averaging 6 runs a game with that lineup alone.
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, they're averaging, just looking at the stats without Judge in the lineup over the last 24 games, they're averaging 3.7 runs when they were averaging 5.4 before.
And this
it's 2 runs less a game.
These are lifetime, including last year as well as this year. But their last 9 games, we talked about they're 3-6. So that's that same percentage of you're losing 2 out of 3 essentially. So it's not a good look. But the one thing I will say about Judge, I know that we talked about lineups last week, and I was really starting to think about this, because the Yankees always seem to find themselves getting into a rut with runners in scoring position, especially their numbers with the bases loaded over the last month have been horrible. And I'm kind of wondering, are Judge and Stanton batting too high? I mean, Stanton doesn't bat this high when Judge is in the lineup, but when Judge is, he's in that 2 hole. And do you think that it's making it a little bit easier for pitchers, the fact that oftentimes when Judge came up this year, there was a base open, and now when Stanton's up, there's a base open, batting second, and are guys like Didi not able to capitalize in the way that one of them would be able to if they were hitting 3rd or 4th?
Oh, I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, there's, a lot of Judges. I mean, Judge has, 50-something walks this year, 53, 54. I mean, it's an astronomical amount of walks for, a couple hundred at-bats. I mean, there's a lot of open bases, and they're pitching around him when there's no guys on base. And even when there is, if he's batting second and Gardner gets on, there's only one guy. All right, great. Judge rips a double. Gardner scores, we got 1 run, but if Stanton strikes out, which 90% of the time he does, and the rest of the lineup doesn't really do much, well, what's Judge doing in the second hole? Let a couple guys get on. Maybe move Didi up into the second hole. Let him hit the single or the double. Maybe it'll take some stress off of him, batting in a power position when Judge is one of your power guys. I mean, you have 2 or 3 big power guys if you don't count Didi because he's a shortstop. But you have 2 or 3 big power guys in Judge, Sanchez, and Stanton, and it also doesn't help that Sanchez is out of the lineup because that's another guy that you don't have to pitch to. And I think that I think that you're losing on runs batted in opportunities by having Judge in a non-RBI spot in the lineup. I mean, even if he hits a home run, if he's by himself, it's 1 RBI. If he gets a double, it's 1 RBI. Put him in the 4th hole, you get 2 guys on. Home runs, 3 RBIs. I mean, it's simple math.
Exactly. And even before Judge went on the DL, he was on pace to have a significantly lower RBI total than last year, even though, aside from a slight drop-off on home runs, but that was to be expected because you can't expect a guy to duplicate 52 every single year. I mean, that would just be unheard of. But in most of the other statistical categories, slugging percentage, batting average, it was pretty comparable to his rookie year, except the RBIs are a little less, and he was not bad. He wasn't batting second last year. He was batting third or fourth. And I think that also this is a price that you pay when you start bumping up Gleyber Torres and Miguel Andujar in the lineup. And Andujar, they haven't actually done so much of that this year, but I think that those guys batting so low help to balance things out because, hey, first of all, credit to Judge and Giancarlo, too, because I think that they've both shown a lot of plate patience this year, and being able to draw those walks, that's great, but it's great that they're getting on base, but at the same time, they need to be put in positions where pitchers have to pitch to them because
agreed, 100%.
Because there's more. The Yankees aren't creating enough havoc on the base paths. By the time they do create that havoc, who's getting up more often than not? It's somebody like Neil Walker or Austin Romine,
yeah.
and no disrespect.
And unfortunately, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you got bases loaded, 2 outs, you're down a run, you need the tying run in, and Joe Schmo comes to the plate instead of Judge or Stanton or Mookie Betts or Jose Altuve. These big name guys aren't coming to the plate when you need them to come to the plate.
Right, absolutely, and that's why another reason why I think that you saw the team again early in the season when they were just absolutely crushing it in May because you had Gleyber Torres hitting 9th, and people look at him like, oh, yeah, he's so great, how can you not bump him up? But it's like when you have that guy hitting 9th, all of a sudden when you start getting to the 2nd or 3rd time around that lineup and the Yankees are getting guys on base and now they're into their groove, all of a sudden by the time Judge is now coming up, now it's like you had a second leadoff hitter, so you've got Gleyber and Gardner doing their thing, and now he's coming up with men on base all of a sudden.
Yeah, or even if Gleyber leads off an inning, it's the 9th batter. So, in being one of the better extra base hit hitters in the league, rips a double. Gardner comes up. You want to play a little small ball, bunt him over. Judge comes up, hits a fly ball to get him in. I mean, it's a good strategy when it works, but unfortunately, it doesn't always work.
Right. And, as we just spoke, we're talking about hits with runners in scoring position. We got the game on right now, and Aaron Hicks just ripped that RBI single, and they just took the lead on the White Sox, and that's when the Yankees need to start.
I just said Didi needs to start hitting doubles to get guys over, and what does he do before Hicks hits a double to get Stanton over?
It was ripped, too, the deepest part of the ballpark. That could have been a home run if he pulled it a little bit more. And, But yeah, that's what the Yankees have really been lacking is those timely hits with runners in scoring position, because I really got the feeling they've been 500 or so pretty much since the beginning of July. They've left a lot of runs on the table, and I think that that's what you can pin it on. But it's not just the lineup not quite performing up to potential. It's also the starting pitching not going deep into games.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, unfortunately, you're getting a lot of these pitchers. I just said it before, throwing 20, 25 pitches an inning, and they're getting to the 4th or 5th inning, and then you have the bullpen like last night, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and you're pitching 1 inning, 1 inning each from the bullpen, and you're tiring out your bullpen, and then it happens the next game and the next game and the next game, and you're not getting the depth that you're used to getting out of, pitchers. I mean, you go back to what we said about Porcello throwing 89 pitches to give the entire bullpen a day off. I mean, that's huge. When's the last time the entire bullpen for the Yankees has had a day off?
Tanaka just about a week or so ago.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen that often
enough that these guys are getting long days or long rests. I mean, maybe it'll help now that Sonny Gray's in the bullpen. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit too. But I think a help from him would be a long relief position in the bullpen. If you get Tanaka or Lance Lynn like tonight to throw 100 pitches in 5 innings, if that's what happens, and you want Sonny Gray to come in and throw 3 or 4 innings to get to the 8th or the 9th, if that's what the situation calls for, I mean, that could really start giving some of these other guys rest, because Sonny Gray's used to being a starter and not a reliever. So if you can turn him into a long reliever for 3 or 4 innings of effective pitching, that'll definitely help.
This might be true. Again, if Gray starts to turn into a long reliever, then with him expending that much energy, he's essentially going to be put on that same schedule that he was as a starter, where he's only going to be available every 5th or 6th day. So, and not to mention, he's not a guy that you can really depend upon extensively in that role, because you could say he's only going to be responsible for a few innings. Well, in a lot of his starts this year, he wasn't able to even get through a few innings. So he's not a guy that you can count on. And on top of that, you really need starters going. They need to give you more quality starts. The Yankees, the Yes Network just threw up a great stat. The Yankees are 42-4 this year when they get a quality start from a pitcher, and that's the best percentage of any team in the last 100 or so years. I think the next team behind them was a team from 1918. So, hey, that's great, but 42-4 is 46 games, and the Yankees right now have played 110 games, so that means that they're getting quality starts in less than half of their games. That right there is a problem. And
yeah, I mean, the 42-4 is great, but when the second half of your games are not getting quality starts, you're not a 500 team. Or you're close to a 500 team, which is unfortunately, I mean, they have the third best record in baseball right now, so they're not a 500 team, but they're playing a lot like a 500 team lately.
Yeah, and that just, again, it stems from, it really just I think it comes down to mainly the starting pitching not being good enough. You need to have these guys going deeper into these games to give the bullpen a rest. These guys are not meant to pitch every single night. You're going to burn them out. You're seeing that fatigue. And Yankees starters, if you look at the numbers, they have averaged this season. Luis Severino is the only one who has not averaged about 5 innings a start or less. You need Severino to be, on average, about a 7-inning guy. And then you need Tanaka to be 6 or 7 innings. If Tanaka's like a 7 or 8 inning like Severino, then that's a bonus. And I do think that Tanaka, he faced a very good Red Sox lineup and did a good job working out of trouble. And they did really what the Yankees should have done throughout this series, which is, again, to just stay patient and drive up the pitch count. But again, Tanaka, other than that, he looks like he's kind of gearing up for a stretch run akin to what he produced last year. But
I mean, I sure hope so, because they definitely need it.
You can't depend on CC to give you quality starts on a regular basis anymore. It's clear at this point that he's a guy who occasionally might pop that off, but if you get 6 from him, that's a luxury. Lance Lynn, we saw tonight, he labored through almost 30 pitches in the first inning against a team that would be in last place if they weren't in the same division as the Royals. So just need a little bit more reliability from these stars, especially with Severino not being himself lately.
Oh yeah, he's nowhere close to himself lately.
Yeah, you cannot keep depending on the bullpen for 4 to 5 innings a night.
No, they're going to get tired out, and that's exactly what happens. And then Chapman has save opportunities like he had last night and blows them because he's exhausted. However, I don't think the Yankees should give up on the divisional race. I still think they have an opportunity to make up ground in the Red Sox. 9.5 games is a lot of ground to make up, but there's a lot of baseball left to be played.
Well, you can wish in one hand and have a Sonny Gray start in the other. But
Sonny Gray's in the bullpen now, so there's no more starts from him.
My point.
We'll see how Lance Lynn does tonight, though.
My point exactly. So let's go over the math here about this whole comeback. Yankees have 6 games remaining against the Red Sox, the team that just swept them in 4 games. If they win all 6 of those games, the deficit is 3.5. The Yankees have also played 3 less games than the Red Sox due to rainouts. If they win all of those, now the deficit is 2 games. So the Yankees need to be... let's see. They need to beat the Red Sox 6 times in a row, and they also need to be 2 games better than them.
Not even mediocre.
Physically
better than the Red Sox.
They need to be better than the Red Sox after they've taken care of whatever business they have left against them. It's not something that can be counted on at all at this point. The Yankees need to just look at these games and just think about winning these games, because guess what? The Yankees won the wild card last year, and the Red Sox won the division, and the Yankees made it farther than they did. You can see in any sport from NHL to NBA to NFL to Major League Baseball, all you have to do is get in the playoffs. The whole top seed advantage thing, unless you're the Patriots and you happen to always find yourself playing a 500 team in the divisional round, the seeding in the playoffs doesn't mean anything. All you have to do is get in and handle your business. And although we worry about the wild card game, should the Yankees be able to win one game at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs, if they're going to win the World Series this year, then they should be able to do that. So they just need to look ahead to what's right in front of them. What's in front of them right now is a team that would be in last place if they weren't in the same division as the Kansas City Royals, and they need to beat up them. They need to beat up the Texas Rangers. They need to beat up the Marlins. What has separated the Red Sox from the Yankees, we talked about this last week, the fact that if the Yankees take 3 of 4 from a team, the Red Sox are winning all 4. When you're a really good team and you're playing these lesser teams, especially when it comes to like the Orioles and the Rays, the Yankees have played down to the competition, and they're better than that. They have to be better than that, or they're not going to be where they want to be. So they need to just take this one series at a time and get back to playing quality baseball, because the way they're playing, they're not beating anybody right now.
Well, technically, right now they're winning 4-0 against the White Sox.
Well, that would be a good start.
That's a good start. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I guess the outlook on the season is, keep your eye on Oakland and win more games than they do.
Yeah, and I think Oakland's finally turning a lot of heads, because they just overtook the Mariners for the lead in the second wild card. This is the first time that this has happened.
6 games in a row is a pretty decent winning streak.
This is the first time this has happened in months, and
years. Billy Bean's doing something over there.
The A's had some difficulties with injuries, of course. Trevor Cahill missed some time this year along with Edwin Jackson, and they're both pitching very well for them right now. Sean Manaea has been pretty reliable at the top of that rotation for most of the season. And hitting-wise, they're really taking care of their business. I mean, when you look at Chris Davis's numbers, they are among the tops in the league. He's never going to be an average guy. He's kind of an all or nothing as far as power goes, but he's driving in a ton of runs. He's got 86 RBI. Matt Olson, he's got 22 dingers. Jed Lowry has not really played as great the last couple months as his smoking hot start to the season, but is that a guy that anybody ever thought would have a real chance at a 100 ribby season? And he's on pace to do just that. So this lineup is really they're over delivering. They're exceeding expectations, and it's an upstart fresh team, and it's one that in a one game situation could be problematic, I think, for anybody if they get hot at the right time. I think that with them and the Mariners, they're both teams that are pretty raw, but they're the teams that if they get hot at the right time, they could surprise people.
Yeah, I mean, the Mariners definitely still have a chance to overtake them, though. I mean, Robbie Cano is back on the 14th of August, I think, give or take. So, I mean, it's a huge bat and a Hall of Fame caliber player that's coming back off of his PED suspension. I mean, hopefully he doesn't stick any more needles in any more places, and he should be all right.
That's right, and it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people gave the Mariners their last rites when Cano went down. Oddly enough, that's when they started winning, but obviously getting him back, this couldn't be a better time for him to return, because now they're looking like Princess Leia right now. Help me, Robbie One Kenobi, you're my only hope. So they need him to get back, and it's looking like a tight 3-team race right now. And on that note, we're talking Star Wars, the evil empire. We need the Yankees to start doing what they do.
Agreed, 100%. All right, so let's talk a little trade deadline.
Yeah, we had some more moves since we last talked, of course. The Pirates got Chris Archer, and the Rays, in their infinite incompetence, traded Chris Archer years after they could have gotten real value for him
because a rosin bag.
exactly. And I mean, the Pirates are a team in desperation right now. I mean, they're making moves after 3 months after they started slumping. They had a great start to the season, and now they're falling out of the playoff race. And they're Archer's a good guy to have on the staff. He's a guy that racks up strikeouts. His ERA has always been kind of high, but again, I think his value was higher like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not his peak performance, and, he's definitely been better in years past, but they still got some prospects, for him, which is going to help in the rebuild. I mean, if they can ever rebuild, I mean, they seem to always be in a rebuild and never really seem to come out of it. But hopefully Chris Archer does some great things for the Pirates. I mean, they're really looking for end of the year push.
Yeah, they're just hovering around 500 right now, but they're fourth place in a tight division, although the Cubs have had a little bit of a slide lately. They're still well ahead of. I think Pittsburgh would need a ton of help to get into the postseason at this point, and I don't think they really have a stretch run in them to overtake all these teams. But at this point, you're hoping for.
I mean, they're less games back from the Cubs than the Yankees are from the Red Sox. So.
Yeah. But again, it was such a busy race, especially with the way that the Brewers loaded up. I don't think that this is really going to happen for Pittsburgh this year. They've really struggled to find consistency. I mean, the fact that they still have barely a winning record after a smoking hot start to the season. So since then, they've played just under 500 ball. So I don't really see that turning around anytime soon. But the Brewers, we're talking about the NL Central. They just got Jonathan Scope because the Orioles are pushing ahead in their mission to potentially win under 40 games for the whole season. So
they're trying to see how many games they can lose.
Yeah, and Scope is a good pickup for the Brewers. It's a guy, they've got a lineup that has a ton of power hitters, so that's another home run threat.
And the Dodgers picked up Brian Dozier. What's your thoughts on Brian Dozier headed over to L.A.?
Man, Dozier, it's such an interesting move with the Twins because I think last year they seemed to arrive pretty early, and they were considered like, oh man, we got a young team on the rise. They won 80-something games, snuck into that wild card game, but they're going to take that leap forward. They added some veteran pieces, but Dozier, he was a guy that was supposed to be at the forefront of that lineup, but this is it's a common case of a team that they really made a misjudgment and they were not as far along as they thought they were, and that leads to them moving guys like Dozier.
Yeah, and he'll definitely help out LA over there. I mean, they're tied for the division, with Arizona, and again another tight race with Colorado and San Francisco, not too far back. So it'll.
You're talking about the guy that's only a year or two removed from a 40-homer season.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there's no reason that he won't help the Dodgers in that race for the Western Division. So.
And they've been kind of middle of the road lately. I mean, you kind of don't know what to expect with Arizona this year because they've been so up and down, but. I think you had a feeling at one point about probably a month ago that was going to be about that time that the Dodgers were going to take the reins.
Yeah, I don't see why the Dodgers won't pass out Arizona. I mean, Arizona definitely added a few, bodies to help out, but I'd be wildly surprised if LA doesn't outpass Arizona in that division.
I think if you're Arizona, you have to be kicking yourselves right now for not re-signing JD Martinez after what he did for that team last year and what he's doing for the Red Sox right now. And you look at where you are, and again, this is a team that, hey, for all intents and purposes, as we speak, they're in first place. But it's a real tight divisional race. Again, we said that due to the Dodgers' experience, we expect them to pass Arizona once again by the time October rolls around, but you have to think, oh man, what JD could have done to, create some more space at this moment between Arizona and LA.
Speaking of player impact on divisional races, what about George Springer being out for 10 days? I mean, that's that's huge, on the Astros. And on top of that, Lance McCullers is out too.
Yeah, and of course this adds up for the Astros already losing Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve for a little bit. So now you're losing, your three heavy hitters. Of course, Alex Bregman has actually been the leader, homers and ribbies for them. That's a deep lineup, but still, it all adds up. You don't want to lose all these guys all at once at this point in the season, especially with two contenders hot on your heels. And with McCullers, it's crazy. The Astros were the only team in the majors that only required 5 starters all season. That's the best rotation in baseball, bar none. And we saw that McCullers and Charlie Morton were kind of the unsung heroes of the Astros World Series run last year. I mean, we saw especially with Morton. You look at what he's been able to do this year, and mid-30s journeyman pitcher that was kind of went under the radar his entire career. That's really found his groove here in 2018, and he's found that consistency, and he's been just great for them. And the Astros, yeah, they've got the depth. If any team's got the depth to withstand these temporary losses to the DL, it's going to be them. But again, it's certainly a lot to lose at once.
Yeah, I mean, any team losing 3 of the 4 best hitters on the team, is always a major impact, especially this late in the season. I mean, beginning of the season, maybe they can get away with it. On the side of the pitching, they have the best pitching rotation in baseball, like you said. So losing one guy for a little bit of time, I mean, it is a scary injury. It's nothing too crazy right now, but my own thought process on anybody who ever has a strain in their pitching forearm is never a good sign to come. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys. I mean, Steven Strasburg, when he was first throwing and he first started to have tightness in his forearm, and then he started pitching again, then he had a strain in his forearm, turned into Tommy John. And time again, I've seen these strains in forearms turn into Tommy John surgeries because they don't recognize them right away, because the MRI doesn't really come up with a lot right on the initial MRI. I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I've been through Tommy John, and I've been through MRIs, and I've been through different physical therapists and different opinions. And even one of my physical therapists, when I was going there, said the same thing about Steven Strasburg. I mean, the stiffness in the forearm leads to Tommy John 95% of the time. It's definitely a scary thing, and something to look on. We'll definitely be touching base on that, in a couple weeks.
And I think that with the Astros, you're in a situation where, because you have that pitching depth, you should, if there's that kind of concern with Lance McCullers, be honest with yourself. This is the 5th starter on your team, and although he's been pretty productive for you this season and last as well, I think that he's 24 years old, and if he's got an issue, you want to nip this in the bud early. And I guess you don't want to lose anybody for an extended period of time, especially a team that depends so much on their starting pitching because they don't have the pen depth, a lot like the situation the Red Sox have found themselves in. Again, you're dealing with your 5th starter. You've got so much depth to withstand the temporary loss that if this guy has an issue that could become a larger issue if it's not taken care of now, you need to get a jump on that and be honest with yourself, because the kid's only 24, and if you can get this thing taken care of before he's in a situation where you might have to miss 2 seasons, then you got to get it looked at.
Yeah, and I mean, they can always try to make a last-minute roster move, maybe call somebody up or, make a trade through the waivers or something, to make up for that 5th starter. I mean, you're not talking about replacing Justin Verlander, thankfully. I mean, he is McCullers is definitely a big guy on that roster, and he's definitely going to help them out. But
he's good, but once he gets to the postseason, you're looking at a long relief guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're, especially in a 3-game series or 5-game series, you only got to win 3. I mean, you're not throwing McCullers game 1.
No, he might not. Yeah, he might not pitch at all in a series like that. So yeah. But switching gears, we've got rumors swirling around Mike Scioscia. There were rumors that he was going to retire as a head manager of the Angels, and he said that these rumors are poppycock.
Absolute poppycock were his words. So I don't think Scioscia's going anywhere. I mean, you never know. He's been coaching and managing for as long as I can remember. There would be no reason to, hang it up unless he wants to spend more time with the family or whatever his reason is. But, even if he did hang it up, there would be nothing but respect from the rest of the major leagues. And, he's a phenomenal coach, phenomenal person, and definitely a great manager also. So either way, we hope to not see him go because he's definitely fun to watch as a manager. But if he goes, best of luck to him.
This is the guy who is the longest tenured manager currently in Major League Baseball. He is the second longest tenured head coach in all of sports, behind only Greg Popovich. So he's a guy he's been kind of the face of the Angels franchise, I think, for a while now. It's been since 2000. I mean, he obviously earned a lot of goodwill by winning the World Series in only his third season. So, and this is a guy who, throughout the early part of 2000s, he led the Angels to being a perennial playoff team, and I think that he's a guy who you look to as a source of leadership, somebody who provides the right kind of temperament that you want in a head coach or a manager in baseball. And that's the reason why he's been able to stick around on that team for so long, even though the success has kind of come and gone. They've been an inconsistent team during the latter half of his managerial tenure, but there's no question he's been the right man for the job, and I think he's a guy that everybody across the league has a lot of respect for.
Definitely, and I do think if he does retire, I don't see why it wouldn't be with the Angels. I mean, it's like Derek Jeter, getting traded in his last season to go play for somebody else to retire. I don't think that's a thing. So I think if he does retire, it's personally, I would believe it would be with the Angels, and if it's not, I would be definitely surprised.
Right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, at this moment, we are moving into a brand new segment of the show that we are introducing this week. We're trying to have a little fun here. We're here to keep the mood light, and, we're not afraid to laugh at ourselves, or in this case, other people. So, with that being said, here is your very first moment of the week.
I am absolutely blown away at the fact that the Mets were hosting the Reds tonight and had a video tribute for Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey? Who deserves a video tribute? Not Matt Harvey, I can tell you that much. 34-37 in his career with the Mets. Cried every single day when he played for them. Had to have his locker moved because people were making fun of him, and went out to bars by himself because no one wanted to hang out with him. He's a crybaby. He's a phony. Fine, he's pitching a little better.
Great big phony.
He's pitching a little better with the Reds, but he is an absolute clown. And if there's anybody that deserves a video package, it's not Matt Harvey. I mean, what, the Yankees can have a video package for Carl Pavano? I mean, come on, man.
No, and I think what makes this even more laughable is the fact that this guy was essentially ran out of New York with torches and pitchforks just a couple months ago.
I mean, nobody wants him there.
I mean,
in this, some people are saying this was a ploy to bring some money into the stadium for tonight. He wasn't even pitching. The Reds changed their pitching rotation so Matt Harvey wouldn't pitch against the Mets so he didn't get booed. Who do you think initiated that? Not the Reds. Matt Harvey's a crybaby, a fake, and a phony, and he does not deserve a video tribute. Come on. What resources did they spend to make a video tribute on Matt Harvey? That's a joke.
Wow. You're upset.
Matt Harvey's a phony.
Well, alrighty then. I'm going to do my best to match that level of spite and anger, but I will say that this is almost a reluctant moment for me. My moment is Rick Ankiel announcing that he is attempting a comeback as a relief pitcher for 2019.
39-year-old Rick Ankiel.
39 years old, and okay, it would have been one thing if, listen, this guy gave up trying to be a pitcher in like 2004,
to be an outfielder.
To be an outfielder. And, to his credit, he made the All-Star team with his bat.
He had a great arm. He had an
bat.
absolute missile in right field.
It was fine.
Played center for a little bit, but an absolute missile.
Fine in the outfield. He made some things happen, had a little bit of pop with the bat for a short period of time, although that fizzled out. And, he wound up dwindling till he got out of the league a few years ago. But, I mean, if you're trying to make a comeback at 39 as a pitcher, not as a hitter, but a pitcher, I mean, what's he thinking? I don't see this.
Or is he thinking?
Is he thinking? I think he said if he could overcome the anxiety, then he would do it. And I don't really want to knock the guy for making the attempt. But yeah, I mean, I have my doubts here. I don't envision this. I don't envision this being like the Dennis Quaid movie.
Yeah.
Although he wouldn't be a rookie, I don't think he's winning comeback player of the year.
I kind of want to see him and Sonny Gray go 1-on-1 in the bullpen and see who's a better relief pitcher. Too soon.
Ouch. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, on that note, this is the end of your second episode.
Yes, and we want to make sure, please be sure to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Call to the Bullpen Podcast. And
send in any messages, any thoughts, any comments, suggestions for next week, any top stories that come up. If you have any input on any of the top stories or opinions, we're more than willing to talk about them, give you our 2 cents, or even debate a little. So feel free to send us a message, shoot us a Facebook post on our page, share the page, whatever you want to do.
And be sure to visit us on our official website, calltothebullpenpodcast.libsyn.com.
Libsyn, Libsyn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your week, and you can catch us back here next week on Tuesday.
And as always, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Call to the Bullpen.
And we're hanging up.